Hey everybody, Brian from the Cabinet Joint here at our shop in Gettysburg. And the purpose of this video today is to talk, it's kind of a soup to nuts, all-encompassing video on how to install the Blum Tandem hardware into an inset or overlay drawer box. In the past, our videos have been broken up where we have one video that shows you how to put some orange clips in, another video that shows you how to do this. This is going to be, when you're putting drawer boxes in a cabinet, this covers everything. Front frame prep, how to install the glide, how to install the orange clips, what to do if you don't have pocket holes or pilot holes in the back of the cabinet. We're going to cover it all. So stay tuned with us and let's get started. All right, everybody, before we show you how these glides actually install, let's talk tools and supplies. You're going to need a couple of drills or drill bits. I got a Phillips head for certain screws. There is one that takes a square bit or a Phillips. You can use square if you want. We'll talk about that. I've got a pre-drill, like a self-centering bit. You can buy those at Lowe's. I got a 1/16 inch drill bit, tape measure, marking pencil, just basic stuff. For some operations, if you're not using the rear mounting brackets, we'll talk about this, you might need a level. So a little torpedo level is really great to have. Some scrap 3/4 inch plywood may come in handy for certain operations that may affect you. They may not. So everything I'm saying may not affect you for your install. But then you have the actual stuff that comes from us with the cabinets themselves, the rear brackets for the glide body itself, the Tenn-Tex bracket for inset, the orange clips or whatever kind of clips you're using. There's a couple different options we'll show you. And then your various screws that came with the hardware packs as well. That's about it. You may run into a strange tool you need or whatever, but this is going to cover you for most of what we're doing here. Okay, so before I get started on actually showing you anything, I want to give you the lay of the land about what we're talking about. And to preface all of this, I want to say that one of the biggest questions we get asked is, how difficult are these cabinets to assemble? Well, assembly is a broad term. It encompasses actually building the plywood box, putting the front frame on, what have you, but it also includes hardwaring, putting hinges on for doors and putting drawer tracks in for your drawer boxes. And that is probably the more difficult, and I won't even call it difficult, but it's the more nuanced of the operations. Once you've built one or two of the plywood boxes, they're all variations on a theme. This inset drawer glide installation is where a lot of our questions come up. So I want you to pay careful attention as I walk through it. I also want you to understand some of this is very intuitive and you can skip over to different chapters to get what you need. Some of it's not intuitive and you'll want to watch it a couple of times. I'm going to try to cover everything that relates to installing a drawer box into a cabinet. All right, let's walk through some of the nuances. First of all, you have some considerations when you're putting drawer boxes into cabinets. One of them is my box overlay or is it inset? Okay, where that comes in is we have these little beige Tenn-Tex brackets that mount on the back of a front frame like that. And they must go on, ideally they should go on before you even build your cabinet. The reason being, if you don't install them before the assembly, it's very difficult to put those on when you have the cabinet sides right up tight against where they go. You can't get your drill in there, you're working inside of a cabinet. Really ideal if you install those before the cabinet goes together. The other thing pre-assembly is these angle brackets. You want to install those if the drawer glide you're working with uses these. You want to install these on the cabinet back at the pre-marked locations before you even put the cabinet back on. It's much easier than reaching into the cabinet that's already assembled and trying to hold them up. So those two operations are pre-assembly, okay? Now, you look at these brackets and there's little rabbit holes we can go down because not every drawer box is going to use these. And you might be like, well, what are you talking about, Brian? What I mean is on any cabinet that's 15, 18, cabinet depth, 15, 18, or 24, 21 or 24, 15, 18, 21, 24, the back of the drawer glide has a little slot and it's going to receive this angle bracket to hold it up on the cabinet back wall, okay? So these would go into any cabinet that is 15, 18, 21, or 24 deep. If you get into a really deep cabinet that's 27 or 30 deep, that's the track there. You'll see there's no rear catch for this bracket. It will not use this bracket. Instead, you're going to mount plywood blocks to the side of the cabinet to flush it out with the front frame, mocking that up. You're basically the plywood's going to mount inside against the cabinet wall to replace these, okay? Because you won't be able to carry the rear of the, I'm sorry, I won't replace those. Those will still be there, but at the back, you're replacing these because these won't go on the cabinet back. They won't carry on the drawer glide. You're going to mount the drawer track straight to that blocking. We'll show you all this later through these side holes. So that's a nuance to be aware of. If I'm doing a really deep cabinet, It's going to use plywood blocks and not these. Same with a 12-inch deep cabinet. It doesn't have a track on the back. You're also going to get plywood for that so that it can mount straight up to that plywood blocking that's flushing out behind your front frame. These are the nuances I'm referring to. So you kind of have to know, what box am I building? How deep is it? Is it inset? Is it overlay? The drawer box itself, when you go to install your clips, the little release handles, orange release handles we refer to quite often in the videos, there's 3 different types you're going to run into. These are the standard ones that are for your 15 through 24 deep cabinets, okay, very standard. These kind of weird looking ones, it's a little, still orange, but a little bit narrower of a clip. These are what goes on your deep cabinets, okay? That uses a Movento, a Blum Movento Drawer Glides, a little bit different, and so it gets these kind of thinner release handles. And then if you have a really narrow box, let's say you're doing a vanity cabinet, you got those 2 little apothecary drawers that to the left and right of your centered vanity, and the drawers are only 6 inches wide, you can't fit 2 of these together in the drawer or they will actually collide underneath when you go to install them. And so you'll get these narrow clips. You'll also get these for things like trash pullouts, the Blum Tandem trash pullouts that we sell. So little nuances you got to be aware of. We're going to walk through all of this as we proceed. Okay, so let's talk about the first operation. Ideally, this is prior to assembly. You're going to lay your cabinet back on the ground. Here's my top and bottom dados. And you're going to have, in this case, it's a 3-drawer base. I've got 3 sets of pilot holes on each side, so I need 6 brackets. These brackets are only for 15 through 24 deep cabinets. You won't use these if it's a 27 or a 28 deep or a 12-inch deep cabinet. I'm just going to put one on to show you how this works, but you'll want to look at your cabinet to determine your pilot holes. Now, I want to stress, very important you understand this. We sell a variety of cabinets, base 3-drawer, base 3-drawer equal height. If you are just talking about, I want a 16.5 inch versus an 18-inch one, that is not what we consider customization. Your pilot holes will be marked for you to put your brackets on. What I'm talking about is if you and your cabinet coach say, you know what, I want to build a dresser. And I want it 48 inches high and I want it to have 5 drawers. And your cabinet coach constructs a 5-opening front frame for you and a case-only cabinet to strap it on. There are no pilot holes on the back. You're going to have to locate those yourself. What I'd like you to do is, if that's what you're running up against right now, you're going to want to go to the video below in the description, and it talks about how to locate those using your front frame as a template or using hand measurements. Very easy to do, but that will walk you through how to locate your own locations for these brackets. If the cabinet's standard, which is what we're going to base our premise on, is 98% of the cabinets are standard, I'm just going to show you this base 3-drawer. So I have 6 of these brackets, 2 per set of drawer glides, 2 per drawer box, and there's a series of holes in the back. Any of these holes are fair game, but the 2 most important ones are these 2 slotted holes. Because what I'm going to do is I'm going to lay this down. This is the bottom of the cabinet, okay, bottom, top. I'm going to lay this bracket down as the L like this with the L on the bottom, and I'm going to line those 2 pilot holes up with those 2 slots. They end up in the dead center of those 2 slots. I grab the small screws. So when you sorted all your hardware, we have videos to show you in the beginning, before you even start, how to sort all your hardware. You want to make sure you're grabbing the small screws that came out of your Blum Tandem install pack, okay? So when the big drawer glide pack that had the orange clips, these brackets and the glides in it, there's a bag of hardware. There's a whole bunch of small screws and 2 very large screws. You want the small screws. And we're going to put 1 dead center of the top slot, 1 dead center of the bottom slot, and then for security we take a 3rd one and I put it in any one of these other holes. We just pick the top corner, it doesn't matter, but any of these holes are fine. Because those slots are elongated, we're just trying to keep the glide from dropping down if it had too much pressure on it. So now I have screws here, here, and in that corner. And you're going to do that for all, in this case, all 5 other of these brackets. Some cases you might just have a top drawer. You're going to put these where you need them, okay? One thing to be aware of is if you do the prep fall side option in overlay, it's not available in Inset, but if you do the prep fall side option in overlay, Conestoga is basically moving the cabinet side inward by about 5/8 of an inch, and it may interfere with these, so don't be surprised if you go to build the cabinet, you got to pop these back off if you have the prep fall side option, but that's a fairly rare option. It's overlay only, and it will only affect a couple of cabinets in your kitchen. If that's the case, you may have to mount the glides right to the cabinet wall, because your cabinet wall is going to be flush with the opening of your front frame. So if that's the case and your overlay, you're not going to have this bracket, and your cabinet wall is going to be literally flush with that opening on the prep fall side, so you can literally level the drawer glide and screw it to the cabinet wall. I'm not going to cover that right now. I just want to let you know that sometimes these brackets will not be used, but 98% of the time they are. Okay, welcome Inset customers. If you're Inset and you have drawers, you're going to need these Tenn-Tex brackets that come in white bags along with the rest of your hardware. The reason for these is, let me demonstrate on this scrap frame we have. These are all mounted at the back already. Pretend this is my cabinet interior. With Inset, on overlay, the drawer glide sits right on the front frame. It's carrying it so that the front of the drawer box flushes out with my front frame. With Inset, my drawer box, or my drawer front rather, is sitting inside the front frame, so the drawer box is actually inside. There's nothing here to carry the front of this glide, so Blum makes this nifty little Tenn-Tex bracket with a little sliding screw, that little thing there. And what we do is, ultimately, when the cabinet's all built, we will line these drawer tracks up and screw into there, and we can move the drawer in and out till we get it where we want it. But this bracket is what's carrying the front of your drawer track, and thereby the weight of your loaded drawer box. So it's very important these are screwed on well. And this is why we want to have you do this before assembly, because trying to put those on after the assembly is done and you're trying to run the drill up inside and your cabinet wall is right here and the drill's at an angle, it makes it vastly more difficult. You're working inside the cabinet. Try to remember to do these before the assembly of the box. If you happen to put these brackets, say in a sink base opening where the false front is, you got carried away and forgot that gets a false front, doesn't need these, you can always take them off afterwards. It won't hurt anything. But it does hurt it if you have to go through and fit the whole kitchen up with these because you built all your cabinets first. So Inset customers, make sure you put these on as you lay the front frame down before you begin assembly. All right, so reaching into your already well-sorted hardware, you're going to grab these long kind of oil rub bronzish looking screws. They've got a Phillips head. You can also use a square bit on these. And if you have a bit box that has the right square bit, it's a much better bit to use than Phillips. So I would use the square, but Phillips will work. That's what I'm going to use in this case. You're going to need 2 of these per bracket. There's these 2 big long holes, and then deep down in you'll see 2 holes in there. That's not for these screws. These screws drop into that big deep hole, okay? So what we do is, there's a little ridge right here. Flip this up, that ridge goes on the front frame and right up tight. I can't pull it any further this way. It's right up tight, and I run it to the bottom of the front frame opening. So this is the top of my cabinet, bottom of my cabinet. I want this at the bottommost section of the front frame. That's always the case. That will never be different with these. I drop my 2 screws in, and then holding the bracket very rigid, straight up and down, I just run those 2 screws in. And now, this drawer track will now sit inside the cabinet attached to the brackets. Can't think of a scenario where you would not use those brackets, except there are occasions, I'll give you one now, a base 2-door, 5-drawer cabinet has 2 partitions. So I've got a door and drawer front on the drawer boxes on the outside and doors on the inside. Anyway, the inside has 2 partitions that share one front frame, and you can't fit both a hinge bracket and the Tenn-Tex brackets with that 1/2-inch piece of plywood. There's not enough real estate. So the way that cabinet's designed is those drawer glides will mount straight to the cabinet wall. You will not use these brackets. The cabinet won't even assemble with them. You'll notice that during the assembly of that. We show that in the video. So there are some situations where these won't be used, but when they are used, they always go to the bottom of the opening and right up tight. Are always going to use those screws. Now, 27 deep cabinet, 24 deep cabinet. So you'll notice my 27 deep does not have any brackets at the back. My 24 deep does. So with Inset, this operation's super easy. You're going to want to grab your drawer glide, okay? You're also going to want to go to your little hardware pouches or cups that we had you sort in the earlier videos, and you're going to want to find this little machine screw. And what this does is it screws into the Tenn-Tex bracket on that little sliding screw hole I showed you earlier. Okay, you want to have 1 of these per Tenn-Tex bracket. And now I'm going to switch over here, working on this middle opening. I take the tail of my drawer glide on 15 through 24 deep cabinets. You're going to have the little tail on the drawer glide, and that goes on the T Very intuitive. There's a T-slot in the back, and you have that track, just run it between. And now the drawer glide can slide forward and backward, but its weight is carried by that rear bracket. Now what I've got to do is find the right position for my drawer glide. So the first thing to do is take the screw tip and stick it through your second top hole. So there's 2 rows of holes. I want the top row, second screw back, and you screw it into the screw hole in that little sliding bracket. And now this will slide forward and backwards. And what I want to do on inset is, intuitively you would say, pull it all the way forward till it stops and screw it in place. That's going to make your drawer box stand, or your drawer front stand, a little bit proud of the frame. So what you want to do is, you want to run this track back until the front of the track is just covering that slot. If you start to see this elongated slot, you're too far back. You want to cover it. And I run it in, and now my drawer glide is locked. Let's say you get downstream of this video, you put your drawer box in and you see that it is standing a little too proud. You can always come back and loosen that and push the drawer glide back in. So now I have this 24 deep one is all fitted up. Everything's in there. The drawer glides have a little bit of back and forth slot at the rear. That's by design so that your drawer can find its natural center. So if they lock that in place and your drawer glides were not running in parallel, the drawer box would bind. Blum, in their infinite wisdom, allowed there to be some float at the back, and you want that. That's perfect. So now let's go to the 27 deep. Again, whether you have inset or overlay, inset I've got these brackets, overlay I don't. What's critical here is, if I take my drawer track, put it in the cabinet, no rear bracket, I put it in the cabinet, I can make my connection here, but now my glide is just slopping around in the back. How do I lock that in place? This is where these pieces of plywood come in handy. Now I must stress, if the cabinet is a standard cabinet, Conestoga is going to send these 3/4 thick blocking plates for you. Okay, they're about 6 inches wide, to the right height. You stand them up in the back of the cabinet and it will capture all 3 drawer glides because it's standing upright. This is a custom box. This is one where one of our cabinet coaches designed using a case-only cabinet. This is going to be a warming drawer down here, and I've got this center partition. So we have to supply our own 3/4 thick plywood. So I've cut a piece here just to show you. The main thing you have to understand, whether you're inset or overlay, it's irrelevant. You want the block to span both sets of holes if possible. That might mean you have to run it vertically, or horizontally rather, or you can run it vertically and try to catch them both if you can. Whatever it takes to get this flushed out with that so your track runs straight and you've got enough screws in to make yourself comfortable that it will hold the weight you're going to put in that drawer box. Okay, I screwed this in. I just used some larger, kind of got a big head on them to hold it in well. Use whatever you want to mount this block. Just make sure you don't use something so big that it pokes through a finished side. Once it's locked in place, this 3/4 thickness will flush out with my front frame here. So now all I've got to do is put my drawer glide in. Same operation, grab my machine screw, second hole back, find the front of my little elongated hole, screw this in place, and now it won't move. And now I have this rear set of holes, and I can screw into that screw hole there, into this piece of plywood, and I am running perfectly parallel because I'm 3/4 here and I'm 3/4 there. And I can do the same thing for my second hole, or my second track. The only difference is when I do this one up here, I don't have a level cabinet floor to work with, so I've got to attach it here, then put a level on my drawer glide, and once it's level, I can make my attachment point back here. Otherwise, it's just going to be sagging, so you want to get the drawer glide level, and you can use a torpedo level up there, a 2-foot level, whatever you've got. You just want to make sure it's running level before you lock it to the cabinet wall, okay? All right, so I'm going to go ahead and install this, come back and show you the finished product so you can see what it looks like. I've got my bottom track in, so that glide is ready to go. This one, I placed it in and I set it where I want and screwed that in real good, and right now it's just floating here. I can move it up and down. So I threw my torpedo level on here, wait till I got it level. I'm level, so I'm going to find a hole in the back, run that in there, take my torpedo level off, and I'm going to do one more just to be sure, because these 27 deep glides or drawer boxes might have a lot of weight in them. I'm going to do that row of holes too. So now I've got 3 attachment points, 1, 2, 3 on this drawer glide that's suspended in space. So now these glides are ready to go. If I do the same thing on the other side, we can put drawer boxes in here. Okay, on overlay, because the drawer box is now sitting out flush with the front frame and the drawer front is attached to that, the drawer glide can be carried by this horizontal rail. So you can see I have it setting up there. On inset, we're back in here because my drawer box is behind the front frame. We're flush with the back of the front frame. On overlay, the glide will sit out here and rest on this. So there's no need to worry about carrier brackets or any of that. And now I'm going to switch over here, working on this middle opening. I take the tail of my drawer glide on 15 through 24 deep cabinets. You're going to have the little tail on the drawer glide, and that goes on the T. Very intuitive. There's a T slot in the back, and you have that track, just run it between. And now the drawer glide can slide forward and backward, but its weight is carried by that rear bracket. The drawer glide can be carried by this horizontal rail. So you can see I have it setting up there. The critical part of this is how far back does my drawer glide get set from the front frame, and that dimension is 5/32 of an inch. Now, a lot of tape measures don't read 5/32, they only go to 1/16. What we like to do is take a little piece of plywood, 1/4 inch plywood, and then rip a piece that's 5/32, or if your tape measure goes to 1/16, go to 3/16, and then half of one mark back. So you're like 2.5/16. Make a piece of wood like that and glue it together, just make an L. And all we do is, as we're going through, we take the little gauge we made and we just pull the glide up behind it, and we go down and do that to all the glides, pull them up behind, and now we can run our screw. The critical thing is, when I put this on, I want to be 5/32 behind the face of the front frame, and that'll be perfect, okay? Once I do that, I'm going to grab, this is very critical, you want to have a self-centering drill bit. You can buy these at Lowe's for about $7. Self-centering drill bit. I think we even have them in our tools and supplies shopping page. You're going to take this and you're going to put it in the top hole, just because it's easier for the drill bit. If you get to the bottom one, the drill's kind of cocked. I like to use the top one. And you're going to drill a hole there, and that's going to center the hole. That little collar will make sure that the screw hole is dead center of that, so that when you put the screw in, it doesn't move the drawer glide forward or aft. So now I can take the screw, that head has to be large enough to stay in that hole and not have the glide pop off. I can run the screw in, and now that glide is tight. I'm not going to do that on this cabinet because this is a customer's cabinet and it's inset. I don't want to have a hole in their front frame, but putting the screw in is the easiest part. You don't need to watch me do that on video. So again, critical thing is 5/32 back, and make yourself a little jig if you have more than a couple of cabinets. Otherwise, it's kind of a pain to run through and measure all of these setbacks. And that's your overlay. You're still using the same exact bracket in the back if it had one, or in the case we had over there, if there's plywood carrying it, that's all the same, but you don't want to lock that plywood on. If you're using that plywood method, you don't want to lock it onto that plywood until you have your setback here correct. Now I can go and drill into the cabinet wall using that plywood blocker. Okay guys, we're in the home stretch here. The last part of this operation is to put the drawer glide release brackets onto the bottom of the drawer box, and then we're going to go ahead and push this into the cabinet and show you how to latch it in. On our final segment of this video will be how to adjust all this so you can get your drawer box dialed in. Okay, so remember, 3 types of clips. These are our standard ones. They're going to represent 95% of what you do, are these two. If you have deep cabinets, 27 or 30-inch deep cabinets, you're going to get these funny looking Movento ones, a little bit different looking than those. And then if you have really narrow drawers or a trash can pull-out that uses the Blum Tandem, you're going to have these narrow release clips so they don't collide in the middle here. So these two versions install pretty much the same way. Your drawer boxes should come already pre-drilled right there and there to receive screws in these 2 holes here and here, or in this case, here and here. So I run this up into the corner. We want that gray part against the corner, not like that, but like that. Same there. And then we're just going to take the small screws that came with your hardware pack. Remember, big drawer track bag, angle brackets in it, and the orange release handles, little bag of hardware. You want some of the small screws. We're going to run those in here. 1, 2, 3, 4. So let me grab some of those screws and we'll make that operation happen. Okay, so here's the 2 holes I'm looking for. Slide that up and you'll see those 2 holes match up. 1, 2. Okay, for my 27 and 30-inch deep cabinets, it's the exact same. Push it in, 2 holes, I'll screw that in. I'm gonna put this bracket over here because that's the one that goes with this drawer. But the last one is this little guy here. It's the narrow one. I'm not gonna install it because this is not, again, it's a customer's job. I don't wanna make errant holes. But the gray adjuster goes against the wall, and instead of having these 2 holes, we have this little L-shaped plate with 2 holes here. So I run it in, run it forward, lift it up so that that little plate goes over my drawer box. Then I would grab a little 1/16 inch drill, pre-mark those 2 holes right there, drilling into the wood because I don't want to split it. So I would drill into the wood about 1/2 inch. And then wherever those holes are, I use 2 little screws, little flathead screws, again, the small ones, same ones you'd use here. I will screw them in there to hold that in place. And this is the same kind of, I kind of squeeze that to release it instead of squeezing that. But it's the same basic Blum piece, and it allows it to get narrower so that I can fit 2 of these in a very narrow drawer box. These are fairly rare, but you will use them on, again, those trash pullouts or very narrow drawer boxes. I'm gonna go ahead and mount the one that actually goes with this drawer box in, and then we're gonna get this cabinet back up here and show you how these drawers install. Okay, I've got my orange brackets, release brackets on the back. This is gonna be a very fast section of this video. You merely lay it up there, very careful not to bang your front frame. Lay it up there and push till it clicks. Now my drawer, that one didn't go all the way in. Now the drawer goes in sweet as you please and soft closes. Now, I'm gonna go ahead, separate video, we show you how to actually put your drawer fronts on. I'm not gonna show you that now, but I'm gonna bring a cabinet up here that already has the Inset drawer glides or drawer boxes and fronts on. And I wanna show you how to adjust the drawer box up and down, left and right, or tilt it if you had to, because there is 3-way, you can call it 6-way if you want, adjustments on the drawer box itself, so you can dial in, especially on Inset, you can dial in your gaps. Okay, we're at our final step, everybody. We've got this 3-drawer base fitted up, and you should be able to clearly see in the video. So I have this really large gap up here, but the drawer front's sitting on the front frame down here. This is really critical with Inset, but even with overlay, it's helpful. How do you dial that out? Maybe you didn't put the drawer front on quite straight or whatever. Blum is built into these devices, left-right adjustability, up-down adjustability, and if the drawer box is like sitting this way, you can actually, or back or whatever, you can actually tilt the drawer box forward and aft with a adjuster on the back of the track. So how this works is if you want to do left to right, each of these handles that are located up underneath have one of these little wheels on it. And if you spin the wheel, and there's probably a 1/4 inch, maybe about a 1/4 inch of adjustability in there to go left or right. You also have up down, this little lever right here. If I push it, so if this was up underneath the drawer like that, I would push it away from me. We'll raise the drawer, and pulling it all the way back in lowers the drawer to its lowest point. I'm going to show you how all this works live on the cabinet in a moment. Then the last adjustment is on the back of the track. There's a little gray lever right here, and if I do that all the way to one side, you might be able to see it, but hold it this way. If you watch that hook, it'll go up or down. Here it's down, and there it's up. That little hook is going into the back of the drawer. So as I do something with that, it's raising or lowering the drawer as it sits on this track. If I raise the back, it's going to tilt the front of the drawer, the top of the drawer out. If I lower it all the way down, it's going to tilt it back, or you can dial it in anywhere in between. Any adjustments outside of that, remember you have the fore aft adjustment on the Inset with that Tenn-Tex bracket located on the inside of the front frame. Loosen up that set screw and the whole track will slide back into the cabinet. So if you're protruding right here, or you want to bring the drawer front out, you can loosen up the 2 Tenn-Tex brackets and drag the whole slide mechanism forward, because it's sliding on those teeth at the back, that teed junction with the bracket at the back, it's sliding on that. If you've locked the glides to the cabinet wall with that plywood because you're doing a 27 deep or a 12-inch deep drawer, you're going to have to remove that screw and relocate it, or maybe you use one of the elongated holes on the track. If you use one of like these elongated holes here, I'm sure you can see it, there's one in here. If you use those elongated holes, you have a little bit of movement there to move the slide forward and backward, but that's the last operation, is to make sure you're in and out properly. With overlay, it's not near as critical because you have a rubber bumper there, and that one usually doesn't fight us as much, but you definitely may have to move the in and out with the inset. So let me show you how this works. Again, got this really big gap here. Now we're going to open this drawer up, and what I'm going to do, the first thing is I'm going to push that lever underneath, what I showed you a moment ago. And you can see, now I've got it dialed in with a top and bottom gap is nearly perfect. If you look at the left side gap, it's almost touching. The right side gap is really wide. So now I'm going to reach underneath. I'm going to stand in front of the camera here real quick. Then I'm going to spin these the proper way. And I actually went too far. Now this one's big and that one's small, so I'm going to have to dial that in a little bit. And there we go. Now we're perfect. Good gap. Good gap, good gap, good gap. I'm going to go through and do that to all these drawers, but that's how easy it is. Now, let's say for some reason this top was tucked back in a little bit and I wanted to push it out. That's where I can take this on the back. And now I've lifted the back of the drawer box up. And now my top is poking out a little bit, which I don't want. I'm going to put that back down, but it will actually change the plane of the cabinet ever so slightly. I will tell you, we rarely have to touch these adjusters I'm working with now at the back of the drawer. Maybe 1 in 50 drawers we might have to play with that. But these clips, the ones to get your left and right and your up and down, we have to play with those all the time. That's our last operation to get everything dialed in here at the shop, is to fiddle with those adjusters till we have a nice gap all the way around. So that's how easy it is. Blum has built in some really nice features to make these glides pretty adjustable for you. It's all predicated on putting them in correctly, because if you get outside of their range of adjustability, no matter how much you push that lever up and down, you can't close that gap if you didn't put the drawer front on right. So it's stacked tolerances. You got to make sure you start with a good platform, but then you have a 1/4 of an inch up and down, left, right to dial that right in. So we really hope this helps. Sorry for the very long video, but this is one of the #1 things we get questions on are these Blum tandems. So if you ever have any questions, your cabinet coach is there to help you. Give them a call at 888-211-6482. And as always, we really appreciate you sticking with us through a long video. Thanks for watching.